Welcome to our channel Top Reddit Story. Make sure to subscribe our channel and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our hardest to reply your comment. Redditors who went out for cigarettes and never came back. Why did you leave? Where did you go? What is life like for you now? Serious. I was living with a very mean and controlling girlfriend. If it wasn't her way or all about her, she threw a fit. One day I had enough and said I was going to the store and just kept driving. I literally drove for 12 hours and showed up at a friend's house 5 states away and asked if I could crash on his couch. I called my boss and said I wanted to quit work. He was pretty cool about it. He knew my girlfriend and actually set me up with a job in my new city. I have never spoken to my ex since. Soon after my relocation I met my now wife and I could not be in a better relationship. Best thing I ever did. I was living with my parents. I was 17. They told me to leave, then tried to stop me from leaving. I have been in an abusive relationship with my mom and my stepdad for years. Friends helped me load the car. That was 12 years ago. Never been back. I left my home like this. One night, I just packed the essentials into my backpack, walked to a train station and got on a train to Newport News, VA from Pasco, WA. No one knew I was gone until 3 o'clock the next morning. It was to be with a girl my family was totally 100% against. That was a year ago. It's all working perfectly. I am happier now than I ever have been before. Sort of. My cousin went for a walk once. He was dating this woman, who just an awful human being. She got pregnant, swore it was his, and once the kid was born the state went after him for child support, as he wasn't on the birth certificate, even though they were living together. Anyways, the paternity test came back showing it wasn't his, and she flipped her lid. Just lost it. He asked her to calm down and said he wanted to take a walk to cool off. He left everything he owned, minus the clothes on his back and his wallet, and went for a walk that he never came from. A few years back the kid found him. He was 16 or 17. And went on some giant rant about him being a bum and a punkus and whatever other nonsense. My cousin told him he wasn't his dad. The paternity test showed that. And he had no idea why she told him he was the father and abandoned them. Kid left a whole hell-over a lot more confused than he showed up, I think. Edit calm not qualm. I left my abusive husband 7 years ago. I just walked out the door. I never spoke to him again. I had squirreled away money for years because he controlled my income. He had this idea that I was miserable because we didn't have children. So he tried to change that by raping me so I would get pregnant. He didn't know I was using birth control. I had resigned my job, so I just left. I couldn't bring children into that life. I went to live with my parents in a different part of the country. Now I live in a different country. I have a kind and loving partner, and we have a daughter. I'm happy most of the time. My family don't tell people where I live, in case he should find out. I don't know what happened to him. I hope he's dead. Edited to say, thanks for the gold. I wasn't expecting that at all. Said I was going to uni. My sister dropped me off at the station. Said my goodbye and left the country. Parents and sisters were abusive and manipulative. Lived in fear for many years since they threatened to shoot me if they found me. I struggled a lot with alcohol for years and self-hurt, but I'm happily married and don't think of them as family at all. Left my family close to 5 years ago to move to California to start a new life. I was 400 pounds. Living a lifestyle of prescription drugs and drinking at 17 with my family. I was good in high school and even went to college early but wasn't able to secure a loan there to continue past the first year. Dropped my sheet life there and came here. It was very rough for a time, but I'm a lot better now. I had some help from my adoptive father but paid my way aside from the ticket here. I live on my own now and manage an office selling printer parts and various other money makers online. I started my own business last year and have been paying out of pocket to continue school here because the college I went to back home wouldn't release my transcript. I've lost a great deal of weight and am away from any unhealthy addictions. My family is for the most part very cross with me. My mother died 2 years ago nearly exactly. I had planned to go back for her birthday, tomorrow incidentally, in 2013, but she died 2 weeks prior to it. The only regret I have is leaving that door open. I like to think she'd be proud of where I went. Left home shortly before high school graduation. Awful living situation. My parent was in town and told me to go home while she stayed in town. I went home and packed my stuff and left. Returned the car with a note and no one even bothered to call text me for a week. I was left. My dad and my mom had a fight. My dad left, then he killed himself. On one hand, I have no memories of him, I was too young. And I am very sympathetic to mental illness and suicidal ideation. I have had bouts of serious depression in my life. On the other hand, his absence, the lack of dad, left a huge gaping hole in my life. The strangest part is when I turned the age he was when he killed himself. I'm 36. And I'm older than my dad ever was. And I still feel young. Like I have many years ahead of me. I wish I had had the opportunity to know him. Everything I know about him is someone else's memory. Thanks for giving me space to share this. My mother left me at her door. I would visit every Saturday for a few hours. Then she wasn't there. After 10+ years of extreme hate towards her, my uncle enlightened me. He said maybe she left you for the better. Turns out she has extreme mental issues. Drug abuse. It's amazing how few words can change your life. I have never left. But my brother has. One morning, 2 years ago, I woke up with a Krilla hangover. Rolled over in bed. Checked my phone and saw several missed calls and a couple of voicemails from my mother and sister. Along with a text message from my dad. Call me. The first voicemail was from my sister. Sobbing through the phone. She said, for the sake of the story, let's call my brother Tom. Tom just tried to commit suicide. He wrote us a letter and just call me please. Whoa. This can't be real. Then my mom's voicemail. Tom attempted suicide last night. We haven't been able to reach him. But we suspect he might be heading your way. If you see him, call the police. We need to make sure he is safe. Oh shit. This is definitely real. We all somewhat suspected depression from him, but this was unexpected. Anyways, I got out of bed and put some clothes on. I open the blinds and I peek out the window. As if on cue. Tom shitty old 96 4-door. He was flustered. Barely spoke to me but told me he was leaving for California. Refusing to turn him into the police. I bought him lunch. Filled up his gas tank and then I gave him all of the $26 I had on me and wished him the best of luck. He was back home within 2 weeks. Remorseful and embarrassed. I'm glad he's back. Went for a week's holiday in Ireland. Accidentally left the week before the one I had booked off of work due to a mix-up in my brain. After a few days of drunkenness I sent this postcard to work saying having a great time. Not coming back. That was in 2001. Been back to visit intermittently. And my parents' family were cool with it. Ireland is home now. Though I have traveled a bit and lived in a few other countries briefly in the last 6 years. I have never regretted making the move. It was the best thing I ever did. Even back then in the vodka haze it just felt like the right decision. I left my kids with my husband after quitting my job. He was sapping me of everything I could ever have emotionally and was neglectful to me as a wife. It was either leave or heal myself. I am now going through a divorce and I am getting my life together. My kids and I have a better relationship than ever because I am emotionally fit to care for them. I am now the mother they deserve. I was 27 living with my very religious parents. I was miserable there and my boyfriend of 1 year invited me to come live with him. I packed up my stuff one day. Wrote a note and left with him. My parents did not approve of intimate relationships outside of marriage. They would beat me up and probably him too if we would have told them ahead of time. I don't regret it all and it was the best decision I ever made. I ran away from my family. My mom. And whatever family is attached to. I feel so much better. I resented the bullshit my mom would pull on me. She once got me pretty screwed around and told everyone I was abusing her finances etc. She told me to my face she was going to lie and get away with it. And she did. And that was pretty much the family dynamic I was caught up in. When I called her an abuser she couldn't handle it. It felt good to leave and not look back. I got a new job. And a new place and changed numbers. I kinda did this. Woke up knowing how much of a mistake going to art school in San Francisco was. Called a friend who came to the city later that day and helped me pack my sheet and left. I moved in with a different friend. Got a job the next day. And went from there. I told my roommate when they called a few days later, I was in school housing. So I didn't big dig them over. And a friend from work the day I left when she called wanting to get some dinner. Never regretted it. Because eventually it led to my spouse and kids. Edit no. Guys. This is not from him. I am realizing I should have sued the shit out of the writers for stealing my story. Though. I know of 3. All with some serious mental illness. First one left family. Was an army vet. Went down in a plane crash or something in the military. Ex-alcoholic. Was gone for almost 9 years before they found some trace of him in a halfway house. Second guy had mental illness, heavy drug and alcohol illness. Parents sent him to the Navy. One day he was gone. No word. 45 days later he reappeared. Spent time in Navy jail, not sure how it works, for drug use. Dishonorably discharged. Last guy I knew was in school. Everything seemingly fine. Then gone for 2 years. Comes back. Said he was in witness protection. Turns out he was in jail for almost killing somebody. I don't know if this counts. But when I was about 19 I was in a shitty position. All of my friends were doing meth regularly. I had put out thousands of dollars to bail friends from jail and to try to help them out. The girl I was dating was lying to everyone she knew about our relationship. My uncle called me in the middle of all this and offered me a job on the other side of the country. I had my car packed and was headed there within 12 hours. I heard from the girl I was dating about 2 weeks later. She called crying telling me she went to my house and I wasn't there and wanted to know where I was. I told her I had moved and she told me it wasn't my choice to make. That I should have consulted her. I never heard from any of the people I had considered friends. I heard some of them went to jail. Some had kids. Some disappeared. I moved back to the town I left about 5 years later and everything has been relatively okay since then. Sometimes I see people I used to know. And sometimes they recognize me. But mostly I keep to myself and spend time with better people than those I left years ago. I was 21. On my 3rd year of college. Getting drunk and high on pills every single night. Puking every single morning. Ducking guy after random guy. Had just had an abortion. 98 pounds and barely scraping by in my classes. One day I woke up and felt so unbelievably sick, tired of the way I was living I considered ending my life. Instead of killing myself. I packed up as much as I could fit in my car while my housemates were in classwork and moved to North Carolina to live by the beach. I called my parents and told them what I was doing. Which broke their hearts. Which broke my heart. I still come home for some holidays. I stayed in a cheap, disgusting motel for 2 months before I saved enough at my waitress job to get an apartment 40 minutes from the beach. I'm currently married to a wonderful man. Completely sober. Finished my degree and have a baby due in December. I can truly say I'm happy. What zero tolerance school stories do you have? We have a zero tolerance no fighting rule in our gymnasium. Like even if you lay down on your back while you're getting jumped you'll still get expelled. Happened to get into a fight with a guy I honestly could easily beat down, but since I really don't want any trouble with the school or at home, I just blocked my head until the principal came by. After a minute of discussion, he told me that I'd get suspended for 2 weeks, even when I told him that I didn't hit back, so I did what any teenager would have done. I think I got loose from the principal and beat the other guy down and took my punishment. After I'd beaten the original Half-Life, I started rooting around on the install CD and found that they had included Worldcraft on the disc, so I installed it and gave it a shot. Mapping very quickly became a hobby of mine. As a result, I got very interested in architecture and geometry and started to take more notice of the way buildings were structured and laid out. I tried to get my friends into it, but I clearly took to it more than they did, but that was totally fine, since it meant I had a group of dedicated playtesters at my disposal. In a ho, I had mentioned something about the blocky, boxy design of our school, and that it would translate pretty easily into the grid-based low-polygon world of Quake-based maps. As a few of us were walking between classes, we talked a bit about it, pointing out how to model each shape, where we could cheat and optimize things, where we might need to do manual leaf splits, and so on, but didn't make any plans to do anything. That evening, I went home and blocked out about a 15 FT2 area and abandoned the idea after a few hours because the school itself was architecturally boring and pretty tedious to work on. It's important to note that I didn't publicly release this whip. That must have been in the middle or end of a week. Fast forward to the next Monday, and my biology class is interrupted by 5 or 6 police armed with pistols. They entered through all 3 classroom doors at the exact same time, and must have known the seating arrangement ahead of time, because they instantly focused on me and moved in extremely quickly without breaking into a run. 1 took my backpack at arm's length. 2 took me in that arm twisting underarm hold thing where the kinda half carry you. I was never cuffed. When we got outside, I saw at least 3 more, 1 with a shotgun, 2 more going through my locker. When we got to the administration building, I was led into a room in the back and kept there for pretty much the rest of the day and questioned on and off by various cops and guidance counselors / school psychologists. They wanted to know where I had hid my bombs, how many guns I had access to, if I had stashed extra ammunition anywhere, and reminded me repeatedly that if anyone had stumbled across one of the weapons I had hidden somewhere across the school, I'd be liable for anything that happened. They said on several occasions that they had enough to arrest me for conspiracy to commit murder, and insisted that I just cooperate and give up my compatriots. Needless to say, I was scared shitless and terribly confused. Apparently, over the weekend, the little discussion I had had with a few friends as we were walking through the halls had been overheard and grossly exaggerated. The idea to make a level had transformed into me already having a level of the school completed. Placing entities such as doors had transformed into placing students everywhere, and doing it in the Half-Life engine apparently meant that I had built a massacre planning tool. What the police had heard from their source was so vastly different from the reality I understood that I spent the first hour of questioning completely lost and confused because I genuinely could not understand what they were asking about. Their source had apparently said that I had individually replicated the entire student body and thusly asked who I planned on targeting first. I tried explaining how long hand making 2000 models and textures by hand would take, but they seemed to tune out every time I opened my mouth. Their source maintained that I had publicly released this map and that he had played it multiple times at my insistence. There were other things. My dad had been on Paris for business and had grabbed some French newspapers for me, which I had stashed in my locker, waiting for a show and tell opportunity in my French class. I spent probably a half hour of my questioning reassuring the police that this was, in fact, French, and not some kind of secret code language that I was using to communicate with people. They took the newspapers and I never got them back. After the initial holy fucking shit they're pointing guns at me wore off, it was a very strange day. One of the cops, I don't remember who, must have eventually figured out what was going on, because he and I spent the last hour also talking about Pixar and computer animated movies. I understand that they sent police cars to my family members' houses and searched at least my parents' house, but I don't think they had a warrant. My dad was out of state at the time, and my mom did not take my side. I'm pretty sure she waived my right to have an adult or attorney present during questioning, and I know she told the cops to arrest me and that she would not post bail. I know exactly who the police's source was. I was good friends with him and his brother for a few years. I have not spoken to either since I was dragged out of class. I have no idea what I did to anger either or both of them. It's important to note that this was sometime after the turn of the millennium, but before September 11th. If it was afterwards, I'm completely confident I would have been on the receiving end of a proper SWAT team and the entire school would have been evacuated. The parochial school I went to had a zero tolerance for LGBT teens out of the closet. My senior year, right after I came out, the vice principal pulled me out of study hall and into his office to confront me about it. I'll never forget, I've heard some rumors. Are you gay? With a look on his face, as if I had threatened to shoot the school up. Long story short, it was either go back in the closet or be expelled. I didn't want to leave, because it was my senior year, I was almost done, and I wanted to graduate with my friends. In retrospect though, seriously, fuck that guy and that school's administration. Left a BB gun in my friend's car in high school. Security saw it, and he got kicked out. I talked to the principal, who was our friend and mentor, about reversing the decision, or taking the punishment myself. He was just as upset as me, but he kept explaining that his hands were tied. He finally just looked me in the eye and said zero tolerance. Actually, he used my name afterward, so I knew the conversation was over. My friend graduated from an alternative school. My sister almost got suspended in the 3rd grade cause my mom put a plastic butter knife in her lunch one day. I forget why she needed it for her lunch. One of the lunchroom aides spotted her using it and sent her right to the principal's office, and they called my mom to come in. Not me, but my niece once had to do a school project about the Voyagers. We lived in a relevant area in the computer lab. So she innocently typed in furtraders.com/org/net whatever. Of course it was porn. She got suspended. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear, by pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. This security guard is really doing his job, eh? Making these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There can be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. 2 people got suspended for fighting off school property with each other. Also, not my school, but a local school, and it made the news. A girl with Down syndrome or an intellectual disability said a popular athlete molested/assaulted her in the library, and they made the girl write an apology letter to him. Only to find out later he did do it. Many times. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they are both suspended. Attached to this policy is, if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They are both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy, and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. In high school I got suspended for 1 week because I had a bottle of prescription painkillers in my locker. I was taking them because I got a serious knee injury while playing for the school baseball team. I also got kicked off the team and wasn't allowed to participate in any sports at school for the last 5 years of my high school education. The principal explained to me that they had a zero tolerance policy to drugs of any kind. Worst part is, I could have went to at least 10 different lockers in school and shown him drugs in there, but he wouldn't let me because I shouldn't be snitching on my peers. Screw you, Principal Vikers. I went to a very shitty school district. I mean, this place is scum in so many ways. My little brother has had mild autism. He's a very nice kid and always has been. I mean, he opens doors for everyone and compliments people he doesn't even know. Anyways, there was a kid in his grade who was the biggest asshole. He was mean to everyone, even the poor kids who were his friends. He always picked on my brother and his friends, calling them retarded and everything else. One day, we get a code red. Everyone is stuck in their classrooms and there had been a recent trend in girls fighting in the bathroom, so everyone assumed that was what was going on. No, I wish it had been a girl fight. I get called down to the office about an hour later. My brother and his best friend were walking to class. They were at the top of one of the stairwells when asshole Makashut came up behind them and shoved my brother down the stairs as hard as he could. My brother tried to grab onto the brick wall to stop himself from falling and ended up dragging his hand down the bricks, ripping his hand apart. He still has the scar. He hit his face on the tile at the bottom. After doing several head over heels rolls down the stairs. His nose and lip were bleeding, and his back was hurt so bad they thought he had broken it. He ended up going to the Fast forward a week later. He's back in school and the principal calls him to her office. This bitch. I don't know how this bitch was ever allowed to work in a school. She made my brother shake hands with arsehole and make up. She said the alternative was both of them getting suspended because she did not believe my brother did nothing to provoke him from pushing him down the stairs, despite 2 witnesses telling her what happened. My brother has been bitter over that ever since. Also, when my mom found out he had to shake arsehole Makashut's hand, she went to the school and confronted the principal. The principal told my mom, well, maybe if your son wasn't annoying it wouldn't have happened. My mom pulled her across the desk and a secretary had to pull her off of her. Not quite zero tolerance, but my friend's sister grew up in quite a foul-mouthed household with older siblings. Her first word were son of a bitch blurted out emphatically for no apparent reason at the breakfast table, and when she was quite young, 1st grade, some boy pushed her on the playground. She called him a boob. He broke down and cried, told a teacher she had to eat lunch on the psychologist's office the rest of the year because she was a danger to the other students or something, and her mother had to come in. Mother told them that if they thought that was the most pressing issue they had, she thought they should look harder. Didn't go to the meeting. She's a badass in general. The boob got in no trouble for pushing her because he told on her first. She could have easily beaten the crap out of him. When I was in high school, a girl spit in my eye. I see that as the lowest form of an insult you could possibly do to someone, so naturally I retaliated. I yelled and screamed while my friend held me back. Eventually, due to heart issues and being overwhelmed with the stress on my body, I passed out. I woke up in a classroom and that was about it. I gave the office my account on things and they did their investigation. Well, if I remember correctly, it was a day or 2 later before we were both suspended for fighting. Bully punches kid in the face. Kid doesn't fight back because he knows he'll get suspended for fighting. Kid lets the bully hit him until a teacher gets there. Teacher gets there and gives a detention to the bully and the bullied. Not as extreme as other people's, but I was constantly belittled by athletes in school. I always sucked it up, but never went to the administration because I knew they held athletes in a godlike light. When I finally broke and retorted, only verbally calling them an idiot after 15 minutes of being threatened, I was sent to the dean and given a permanent mark on my record. And before you ask, no, I don't live in a place like Texas. I live in Northern California, one of the least sports-oriented areas of the US. When I was in year 10th, grade 9 for Americans, we all had to line up to go into the dinner hall. For whatever reason, they put the menu with what they were serving that day at the front of the queue, so I walked to the front to read it. As I was walking back, a tiny year 8 kid, grade 7, shouted over to me, "Hey, stop trying to cut in the line, you dickhead." I just told him to fuck off and mind his own business, as it's the kind of school where if it looks like you're giving in to a younger kid without fighting your corner, you won't hear the end of it. Then the little shit rugby tackled me, but he was too small to knock me over, so I just kind of stood there awkwardly as he tried to kick me. After a while, I'd had enough, so I grabbed him and picked him up, put him against the wall where he was standing before, and turned to walk off. The headmaster was standing right in front of me, and he'd been watching the whole thing. We both got sent to the reflection room, which is like a higher form of detention. The only time I got in trouble was for trying to walk away from a fight started by someone half my size who I probably could have hurt if I had wanted to. In 9th grade I was in a class that had some disruptive students that always caused problems for the teacher. During the semester they were forced to sit at the desks nearest the teacher's desk. I wasn't a bad student at all, but for some reason I was forced to sit in the front of them. I was pissed. One day we had a substitute and my entire row gave the sub a very hard time. When the actual teacher came back she forced everyone in my room to detention. Many other students protested for me, even the bad students in my row. She said, "That's too bad." From that day forward I helped the bad students to not get caught whenever they fucked with her. There wasn't really a zero tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home, and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells to me to carry it. He were going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running to. Next day teacher is all pissed off. I go in to see the principal and turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone, but never even got close to them. Not even the same block. There was no fight. This also happened all outside of the school. So naturally my friend was suspended for a week plus remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like 2 to 3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all shitty rainy days, but I was happy to leave.